I'd like to call to order the Centerville Board of Education meeting for Monday, March 14th, 2022. Ms. Sauber, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Dahl?
Here.
Mr. Dernbach? Here. Dr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Schroyer?
Here.
Megan Sparks?
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I need approval of the agenda as presented, please.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Sauber, please call the roll.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes. There's nobody signed up for hearing of the public, so we will bypass item number 5. Legislative report. That's me. What? Did you really? Oh, I had it. Should we turn this on? Governor Mike DeWine signed into law Senate Bill 9. The bill requires the Ohio Department of Education and other state agencies to reduce regulatory restrictions by 30% by 2025. The bill also includes an appropriation of $9 million to assist local boards of elections with administering the May 3rd primary election. I will be keeping an eye on this election and report on it more next month. House Primary and Secondary Education Committee held a third hearing on House Bill 403, which would require school board superintendents to file a report with the ODE regarding a teacher who retired under the threat of disciplinary investigation, in addition to those who resigned under the threat of disciplinary investigation. The U.S. House of Representatives passed an omnibus appropriation bill. The bill does not include an extension of the meal waiver authority to the United States Department of Agriculture. The current authority for the USDA to issue waivers is set to expire on June 30th, 2022. Senator Sherrod Brown and other U.S. senators signed a letter supporting this waiver extension. For anyone interested, I have the exact numbers at the end of the report if anyone wants to see those. And that's the end of my report for this month. Sweet. Okay. Moving on, students, it's your turn, please.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Amina. I wanted to talk today about what we've been doing with the middle schools recently in relation to spreading awareness about cyberbullying and making plans for having more, having initiatives like this. So we have met with Tower Heights and Magzig, and we're meeting with the student councils at all 3 middle schools to develop some sort of initiative that the students would be involved in to spread awareness about things like cyberbullying, a digital footprint, and mental health, just to promote positivity at the middle school level where it often starts. So we'll be seeing those through in the next couple weeks, and yeah, that's all.
Good on that.
Good evening, my name is Jacob Weaver. I want to give you an update on our Board of Education Student Representative Roundtable. So this is a group of students that meets usually once per month or sometimes more, and we discuss topics that we want to speak with local state legislators about. So we went over a lot of different topics and we decided on House Bill 565. And this would extend the current State Board of Education, which has 19 members, some appointed and some elected, and this would add 5 student members that are non-voting. So while it's not going to be anything that could, change any votes, it's a lot harder, in our opinion, to ignore student voices when they are in the room with you. And so this is something that we'd like to pursue, and we'd like to have a meeting with state legislators. We have planned in April, April 5th. I think that's the date, or a little later. 9th. Okay, thank you. But on April 9th, we're planning on meeting with local state legislators just to get some support from both sides of the aisle, because this is a bipartisan issue. People from both sides of the aisle want to see that, so we'd like to see some more
Good luck on that.
I know.
Good. Thanks, guys.
It'll be that time, and you already be invited to that.
This is board. The next report is going to be given by our Student Services Director, Ms. Tammy Darrow, and she's going to talk a little bit about an annual public notice that we're required to present. So turn it over to her.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson and the board. Tonight, we're just going to talk a little bit about homeless. We do have some homeless families in our district. For a district as large as we are, it is a very small portion. But again, having any students that are homeless is never what we would like to see. The McKinney-Vento law actually defines homeless as a family or children who do not have a fixed, regular, and adequate home because they have lost their home. There are different homeless classifications. So there's shelter, transitional housing, unsheltered, doubled up, hotel, motel, unaccompanied youth. Most of our families, in fact, all of our families this year that are homeless are actually doubled up. So they all are living with someone, they have a residence to live in, it's just not their specific residence. You will see that our numbers have actually went down this year. We, at the beginning of the year, we had 24 homeless students in the district. We currently have 19, and that is actually affects 13 of our families. So 3 of our students have transferred to another district, and 2 of them actually no longer qualify for homeless. So they're actually in a permanent place at this point in time. Our guidance counselors and our teachers are our first people to know, when there's any changes for our families. Those relationships that they have built with students and parents makes it really good for us because they'll communicate with them that they're having some problems with their housing and everything. We also help with food over the weekends and everything when a family is having a difficult time. If anyone knows of someone that is homeless, they can either contact me or they can contact Tom Hasselman, and then we would help them through everything. Any questions tonight?
Is there paperwork that they have to fill out to be required or registered as homeless?
No, there isn't paperwork that they have to fill out. So the biggest thing about being, well, one of the biggest things about being homeless is, let's say, not that I hope this happens to anyone, but let's say someone's house catches on fire tonight, and so they get displaced because of that happening. Then say they get displaced to Miamisburg. At that point in time, the family would have a choice whether they wanted to remain with us or they wanted to go to Miamisburg, whatever is best, but transportation would be provided for those students. It's just a matter of contacting us and letting us know that there's no paperwork to fill out.
Is there a limit how far a student can go where we would have to transport them?
So according to the law, no, there is not, but there is within a reasonable amount of time. So, if you look at anything outside of an hour radius, that really starts to push the reasonable amount of time. So then we try to work with other districts and everything. The big thing would be if they had to displace, let's say, to Cleveland, because obviously we're not going to get them from Cleveland to get them here, then we would assist in getting them enrolled immediately in Cleveland so that it would be as smooth of a transition as possible.
Right now, can you tell us how far we go for transportation?
Right now, we're not transporting anyone that is homeless. We have transported up to an hour, just roughly around that hour mark, which is hard, but frequently we'll have families that are maybe like in Dayton. Sometimes they'll go like Cincinnati, Hamilton, but that's usually about where we go to.
Kevin, do we have any students that are displaced from out of our district that are living in our district now, going to our school?
No. Other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item on our agenda is treasurer report.
Good evening. I'm going to give you an update this evening on the new state funding model that we're currently being funded under. And just a little bit of history, we've been talking about the Fair School Funding Plan for a year. Last year at this time, it was going through the legislative process, and I would try to give you some updates periodically. The bill was approved June 30th or July 1st, it went into effect. But as with with any new funding model, it takes time then to implement that funding model and to fund schools appropriately. That typically happens usually around the October timeframe, but in January was when we first started receiving our funding according to the new model. And so I want to talk to you a little bit tonight about what our fiscal year 22 cash flow looks like and how our payments were level at the beginning of the year and how they've gone up and down since January. And then we'll talk a little bit about restricted portions of that funding model and the unrestricted portions as well. So on the screen here in the red box, I've highlighted a couple of months, January and February receipts that we've received from the new funding model. Prior to January, we were receiving about $1 million a month in state funding, and that's been very consistent from July through December. Then in January, we had a large influx of money. That is when the funding model was implemented at the state level, and they did a catch-up. They caught us up for the first 6 months of the year, and they're now funding us according to the model. However, in February, that took a little bit of a dip, and it's actually a little bit less than that $1 million that we had been receiving each year. So I'm watching this very closely. We've anticipated for the year that we'll receive about $12.5 million. That was based on the simulations that we received last July or August in that time frame when we were building our budget for the year. And those simulations came from the Ohio Department of Education. And so back at the beginning of the fiscal year, we went with that information because that's the best we had at the time. So now moving on to talk a little bit about the way the funding model looks. This is basically the list of all the components of the Fair School Funding Plan and of the funding that we get every month. And I'm not going to go through all the lines, but I did highlight in yellow a few of the components or parts that I just wanted to mention. These are restricted funds. In the past, we've had a couple of restricted funds, and that was economically disadvantaged pupil aid, and then also career tech. So prior to the Fair School Funding Plan, those were our two areas of restricted funds, and everything else was what was called unrestricted that we could just use for all general operations. So with this new funding model, we have a couple of additional areas that are restricted. Student wellness and success funds. Again, we still have the economically disadvantaged. We now have a category of funding called English learners, gifted funding, and then finally the career tech funds, which again we've had in the past. So the reason that this is important to point out to you is usually with restricted funding, along with that comes reporting and tracking and reporting then that we have to do to basically prove or show that we've been spending that money that we received for that classification of funds appropriately. And so, administratively, we track all of our spending anyways, but the state has put a few more parameters on us. So then in the green, you can see I have a number highlighted there of $13.4 million. This is as of the first March payment. We receive 2 payments a month, so this was last Friday. As of the first payment in March, we'll receive $13.4 million this fiscal year. So that is about $850,000 more than the $12.5 million that we anticipated at the beginning of the year. I wasn't sure where we would end up, but this is a good development. So by the end of the fiscal year, we should see that we've ended the year better than what we were anticipating in terms of state funding.
Question on the slide before this. I
Yes.
know we went through this in work session.
Yes.
The overpayment for January is basically like $2.3 million. Is that, you said it's catch-up, is it catch-up for the first 6 months of the year?
Yes.
Based on the old formula?
It's a catch-up, it's a catch-up, if the new formula had been in place for the entire year, it was supposed to be a catch-up back to that level.
Yeah. Yeah. This comes out to like $380,000+ a month for the 6 months.
Yeah, yes.
So you think maybe they overdid it and now they're making it up with the 187?
I think so. I think that they probably paid over a little bit more than what they had anticipated, but we'll see. When next month I can talk about this
Right.
again, if there's a fluctuation again, we're just gonna have to watch it month by month. What they did tell us was that they were gonna continue to implement pieces of this formula in through March. So they're still phasing in, they're still implementing portions of the funding model. I think the majority of it is in place, but there's still some pieces. ODE has always published a line-by-line, kind of a how-to or an instruction manual on what every one of the different components of the funding means. That's not even available yet for me to go in and take a look at. And so we're all learning as we go. It's taken a lot longer than any other funding model that we've dealt with in the past. But in the meantime, I do believe that we are going to see more funding, which will be back closer to like 2019 levels, which was prior to the cuts that we received when COVID hit.
Ms. Sommer, I had a question on this one as well. I just want a clarification here. Under the fiscal year total, your actual on this one was 14.5.
Yes.
Am I to assume that the actual takes the actual up through February and then pops in that 1 million per month assumption,
It
which is why
does.
it's so much more than the
It does.
13.4 that we're looking
That's
at?
correct.
Okay.
Yes. So if the rest of the months look like February looks, then it's going to come in very close to the 13.4 million actual. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sauber. Next is Treasurer's recommendation. Consider approving the February 2022 financial statements, the monthly general fund rolling report, the monthly cash reconciliation, monthly fund activity report, then and now purchases orders approved by administration, certified by the treasurer, and approved by the board. Resolution totaling $47,542.87. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
May I have the roll call, please, Ms. Sauber?
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes. Consider approving a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Sauber, could you please call the roll?
Could we have an explanation on that one?
Sure. That is a yearly resolution that the county auditor asks the board to approve. It lists all of the existing tax levies and the dollar amounts associated with them. And it's just it's an authorization that the board is saying, yes, please continue to collect the taxes that are already currently in place.
And we do that every year.
We do it every year, yes.
May I have the roll call now, please?
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes. Consider approving the minutes of the following Board of Education meetings: February 28th, 2022, regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Sauber, can I have the roll again, please?
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes. Next is the superintendent's recommendation. Schedule A, the superintendent recommends accepting the resignations as listed on Schedule A. Schedule B, the superintendent recommends the change of employment status or change of contract status for the certified personnel listed on Schedule B for the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. Schedule C, the superintendent recommends the employment or change of employment status for the support staff personnel listed on Schedule C for the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. Schedules D and D1, the superintendent recommends the employment of the personnel listed on the Schedules D and D1 for supplemental contracts or extra duty assignments. And Schedule E, the superintendent recommends the granting of leaves of absence for personnel listed on Schedule E for the reasons and on the dates given. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Sauber, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes. Consider approving a resolution to purchase 1,700 Lenovo 100E Chromebooks for $199 each for a total of $338,300 from CDWG.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Sauber, can I have the roll, please?
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
And again, just to reiterate, the money is coming, right? Tell it where it's coming from.
Yeah, the largest portion of the funding for this initiative is out of ARP grant funding. So 250,000 of that will be paid out of grant, and the remaining $83,300 is coming out of the permanent improvement funds that we use to fund the technology department on a regular basis.
And this is a regular rolling cycle. that
And this
we
is
do.
part of our cycle that we have for the student Chromebooks, and so this batch of Chromebooks will be used to replace and make new assignments for the 3rd graders and the 8th graders, and these devices will last us 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. We already
Thank you.
called the roll, so we're good. Okay. Consider a resolution authorizing the curriculum department to administer the State of Ohio 3rd grade English language arts assessment in paper format for the 2021-2022 school year. May I have a motion, please?
Moved.
Second.
Could you call the roll, please, Ms. Sauber?
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes. Consider approving the academic calendar for the 2023-2024 school year.
So moved. Second.
Can I have the roll, please, Ms. Sauber?
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes. Okay, item number 12, any final comments for the good of the order from the Board of Education?
I just wanted to say it's been, a great couple of weeks for our student programs. I know TI had a great weekend. DECA had a great showing. Boys bowling won state. We had state finalists in wrestling. Basketball's in the Final Four. There was an amazing choir concert between the middle and the high school this weekend. Jazz Cake's coming up. There's a lot of other student groups.
Something tonight,
And there is,
right? I thought there was something tonight, that's why we had to move them.
oh, that's next,
Next month.
there's a
Yeah.
combined band concert next Monday.
Next month.
I thought you remembered my birthday, Mr.
Happy birthday, Annette.
No, next Monday, and it's my good meeting. Okay,
We'll remember now.
yeah. No cupcake for you. Okay, so we're good, no more comments, okay. Item number 13, pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code, section 121.22G1, I hereby move that the board adjourns to executive session for the purpose of considering the employment of an employee of the school district. No other business will be conducted except to come out of executive session to adjourn. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Sauber, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.